Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to Kayak Fishing Weekly, the show on the Serious Angler Network dedicated to all things kayak fishing. My name's Justin Largent, and I'm joined by the one and only Bailey Eidbrett. Bailey, it's good to see you. I see you survived the snow.
So far anyway. It's a little hectic up here in Buffalo. It's kind of an anomaly of a city, if you will, when it comes to snow. I think nowadays our winters, or instead of drawing out all this snow in 2-3 months, it's just gonna pound on a week for us because we literally have about 6 feet of snow, and I'm not even kidding when I say that.
It, it,
With more coming too,
it takes some weather to postpone a football game, at least an NFL game.
especially in Buffalo, of all
Yeah,
places. It takes a lot.
yeah. I saw some of your social media posts. Look like you guys got what, a foot and a half, 2 feet, and that was I don't even know. Was that Saturday?
It
You might have
was
gotten more since I saw.
Yeah, so what happened was, Saturday, we it was when the storm started because I was actually on my way home from Houston. I had a trip, this past week in Houston. I don't know if anybody's seen the new Berkeley baits, but I was down at the Houston NASA Space Center for them launching those, and, essentially, very wisely of one of my coworkers told me I should change my flight, for Saturday because looking at it, we had 45-mile-an-hour sustained winds starting Friday going all the way through Sunday, and it was going to be like gusts of like 60 something miles an hour when I was supposed to be flying into Buffalo. And there's no way in heck, even if they're going to go, that I'm going to be on that plane. So it was, I changed my flight, and what was great was, uh, thank gosh I did because I flew in an hour east of Buffalo in Rochester. And my original flight that I was going to be on was canceled. Like, so I would have actually been stranded in Houston until Sunday, but I was glad I was because I could get home to, the wife and be able to like help with the house and everything with the snow coming in. But I had to drive in but I got a rental car and drove home Saturday through the winds. Like it was, well, the first time I think since I took my road test when I was 16 that I actually ever had two hands on the wheel. The wind was that strong, dude. It was pretty wild. But when it started snowing from there, man, and like overnight we had a good probably 2.5 feet, and then since then we've gotten double that at least, and we got another 2-3 feet on the way starting tonight. So it's been like
Jeez.
constantly just we lost power at one point. Thankfully that didn't take long to come back on. Lost internet for a decent amount of while, which honestly, a total side tangent, was really nice because my wife and I just sat on the couch, talked, read books, and just like put the electronics away. It was super refreshing. But it's been a lot of shoveling, dude. It's been a lot of like making sure the vents aren't covered because it was so. I don't know if people remember last year Christmas, Buffalo in a day got 7 feet of snow, and a bunch of people died from it because of the pipes got clogged and everything like that, and the carbon monoxide and all that jazz. It wasn't good. So we've been actively keeping that free, and the neighbors and all have been helping each other and things like that. So it's fun for a couple days when you have this much snow, but after a while you're like, can this stuff just go away now? Like, I'm ready to
Yeah,
go fishing.
yeah. After hearing that, I shouldn't complain. We don't get nearly the weather down here in Virginia that you do. We got maybe 2 or 3 inches where I am, and it's still enough to shut down school for 2 days. But it's nothing like that. The weather. I think we had temps drop down maybe into like double digits. Like we had, I think, teens for probably the first time this year, and so it's not pleasant, but I know it's nothing like what you guys are dealing with. So yeah, it makes
It's
me feel a little better about our weather.
Yeah, man. I've had a few guys from Alabama that I've been talking about because they're getting pretty cold temps down that way too. Uh, like Tennessee and stuff have been in the teens. But I was sitting there, I'm like, hey, you guys want to trade? And I don't think anybody wants this amount of snow. And we're actually on a no, from Saturday, Sunday, I think it was Monday too. We were on a travel ban. Like we weren't allowed to be on the roads. Like police officers were actually giving out tickets if you were on the road. But we have a statewide travel ban now, where highways and everything are closed off through Buffalo currently. So like if we literally can't leave the house, and
Shoot.
so it's pretty crazy stuff, man. But thankfully
Well,
there's like a plow for every street here in Buffalo right now, keeping some stuff open.
Well, stay safe, dude.
Yeah, we'll try to anyway.
On to the fishing. Not, I mean, we're still kind of in that winter that, I mean, really, it's the start of show season in a lot of places. So not a whole lot going on in the fishing world. But I did see a couple news items. I saw that Bassmaster has their 2024 rules out. I'll be honest, I have not gone through and read them all yet, but I know that list is out. And then, if I'm not mistaken, the registration is open for that first event. I believe it's in February on Lake Murray. So, a couple points there. But then we've got a little bit of news, and I'll kick it to you for our news.
Yeah, yeah. It's been like we started the show obviously in November. It's only been a couple months in, but essentially, kind of just to be blunt with it, is um, essentially I'm stepping away from Kayak Fishing Weekly here. The goal from the beginning was always to have this be Justin's show because one, on the network, we love having Justin on the team, and one of the reasons why I asked you to be a part of this is because one, I think you do a great job of hosting. You speak really well. You have very well formulated opinions, and look at things with the right perspective. And I didn't anticipate it being only 10 episodes in, stepping away a little bit and giving him the reins. But as life happens, it's like just being real about it. It's come down to the point. 2024 added on some things for this year that, looking ahead, trying to get ahead of it before it ends up bogging me down, and just due to time. Like, it was just one of those things. Like, we didn't have a Kayak Fishing Weekly episode last week, and it was 100% my fault because I just have too much stuff going on. And at the end of the day, when you have so much commitments, and when you're kind of overloading yourself, something is going to take a hit from that. And that is one thing I'm trying to get ahead of here is I don't want Kayak Fishing Weekly to take that hit. So I'm not going to become a stranger, but I am stepping away. Justin's going to be taking the reins. He's going to be the host. He's going to keep this shindig going here. And I know everybody loves.
Try.
Now you'll be just fine. And honestly, it's not like I'm going to be fully distant, whatever, like completely gone type of thing. It's, Justin and I are still going to work weekly with each other on this show, talk over ideas. Justin and I talk as it is about fishing and stuff like that. But we got the whole Serious Angler crew operations wise behind the scenes and making sure that Kayak Fishing Weekly is chugging along. And I know you have a great guest today, who I'm a big fan of because I feel like he fishes similar to me. So it's going to be fun to come back and listen. And I won't spoil that. I'll let you announce who the guest is going to be for today's show. But the news is that I am going to be stepping away from Kayak Fishing Weekly for a little bit. If I got 3 weeks, definitely going to try to sneak my way onto some shows if Justin will let me. He might fire me sometimes and tell me to screw off. But
no, Bailey knows I'm going to be calling him nonstop and texting him behind the scenes. Hey, what do I do? I've got a technical issue. That's
the fun part about podcasting.
You're kind of an OG when it comes to this. I'm still learning, so apologies in advance for all of the screw ups.
Hey, that's the one thing about podcasting, man, is it's full of screw ups. It's just how you can roll with them, I guess, and just make do. I mean, when I started Serious Angler, it was literally off of a piece of crap computer and a Zoom, like a Zoom. What do you call it? Yeah, the software. Like, I'd get people on a Zoom call, and I literally would have to re-log in 4 different times because it would crash. And I think people just began to hate me for a little bit because I was like, "Hey, do you mind hopping back on?" And like, wait to finish the show, and it was bad. So this is like an honest, perfect upgrade. You're gonna be doing just fine, and I'm excited to see where, from your direction standpoint, where we take Kayak Fishing Weekly. But like I said, I'm not like completely deserting it. I am just not going to be on every show going forward, and that's pretty much the 101 on that. But I know you got quite the show coming up for today that benefits everybody. I feel like is a learning lesson for everyone, but also might be a reminder for some as well that's have been in the sport for a while.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. We're going to talk some fishing etiquette, and yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I'm interested to hear other people's perspective too, because I feel like it's one of those topics where I'll talk fishing like baits and what the fish are doing. Are they deep? Are they shallow? Like we'll get into the how to catch the fish, but I don't really have that many conversations about, hey, what's the right way to like approach, another fisherman that you're fishing around maybe, or what do you do, on the ramp? Just some basic kind of do's and don'ts. I'm curious to see if our guest has kind of the same opinion as me, or some of the same ideas. And then hopefully we can help out maybe some guys that are just started, because everybody's got blind spots. So I mean, shoot, Casey might said who it was.
Ooh, let it out the bag.
He might. Yeah. We're gonna have buddy of mine, fantastic fisherman, Casey Reed. So I guess without further ado, we'll go ahead and bring him on.
All right, man. Will
Bailey,
you
thank you.
take the show away,
We will.
folks? Appreciate everybody, and you guys are in much better hands than me with Justin here. But I'm excited to tune into the show later with Casey. Dude's a freaking hammer, but you boys enjoy. I appreciate it.
We'll talk to you, Bailey. To bring on a buddy of mine and a fantastic angler that I think many of you, if not all of you, will recognize. Fellow Virginian, again, a fantastic kayak angler, a number of wins to his credit, Casey Reed. Casey, thank you for joining me.
Hey man, how's it going? Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. It's been some crazy weather. You staying warm and safe where you are?
Yeah, it's not too bad here. I mean, it was really cold today. Got a little bit of snow and ice still on the ground, but nothing quite compared to what Bailey was talking about. I wanted to ask him if all them smallmouth were worth all that snow, but I guess it is, because I couldn't deal with all that snow. I don't care how good the fishing is.
I'm the same way. I'd love to catch big smallmouth like that all the time, but the number of months that you can't even get on the water if you want to, I just don't think I can do it. It's it's great fishing, when there's no ice, but I don't think I could do it. I am gonna make a trip up there, and I want to get up there and fish the Great Lakes. I've done St. Clair, but I've never done any of those bigger ones. Have you been up on those before?
Yeah, I fished a little bit of Erie. That was a lot of fun. I didn't really get out on the main lake a ton. I ended up fishing Presque Isle Bay a lot, but I did get on a few smallmouth up shallow on Erie around Presque Isle, and man, I'll tell you, that was a lot of fun.
Is it similar kind of a setup to St. Clair, or?
So I've never actually fished St. Clair before, but
really?
But yeah, I mean, but there, it's just where I was, there's big rock boulders, and like that's what I was catching fish on, in like 4 or 5 foot of water. And unfortunately, that was during the tournament, and all them fish I guess the sun came up and they moved out deep. And I had about 5 bites pretty early on, and then they just kind of disappeared on me. I lost 3 of them, but they disappeared, and I couldn't get another bite the rest of the day. I guess I just didn't go out deep enough after that.
Gotcha. Yeah, that is not my strong suit, that offshore fishing, looking at electronics and stuff. It's something I got to work on, but I can't really think of a better place to work on it than someplace where, catching 2.5 and 3 pound smallmouth, those are considered small. You catch a 3 pounder down here, that's a big fish. Before we go too far down the rabbit hole, what we wanted to talk about today was some kayak fishing etiquette, and some of it I think applies outside of kayak fishing, but just some basic do's and don'ts, some of the unwritten rules that hopefully will help maybe some guys who are just starting out, and maybe some saltier veterans, guys like us that have been doing it a while, but maybe give us a little bit different perspective. So yeah, talking some unwritten rules, and to me the first one, maybe the easiest one is boat ramps. It's like, what do you do on the boat ramps as a kayak angler?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, since I've gotten the trailer, it makes it a lot easier. But there's still a few things, even with the trailer, that I try to be cautious of when what I'm doing, and trying not to just take up any space of any other boats that may be coming in, or even kayak anglers or anything. But like for me, I always try to get prepared in the parking lot. A lot of boat ramps will have a little area, before you get to the ramp that you can pull into and kind of get ready to go. But if it's a real busy ramp, I'm not even pulling into that area, because it's going to take me at least 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes to get everything rigged and ready how I like it. So I don't even like taking up that area, with with me just sitting there kind of getting rigged. So like I said, I personally try to get rigged in the parking lot somewhere, pull in a spot. You're out of the way of everybody, and you don't have to worry about any of that.
Yeah, I
But
think that's the big thing.
you got a lot of.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go,
No,
go
you
for it.
first. All right. Well, I was just going to say that I think that
So I was.
the basic rule is just kind of we keep stepping on each other, but I think the basic rule is kind of be courteous. And a lot of times, say that if it's a busy weekend, in the springtime especially, or if there's a tournament going on, there's a lot of people that need to get in the water. And even if you've got multiple lanes, you don't want to be taking up those lanes and slowing people down. And with a kayak, it takes us longer. Like, even like you mentioned, with a big, with a trailer, it's still, it's not like a bass boat where everything's contained. You unhook a few straps and you back down. It takes a little bit of prep time. And my trailer's not even as nice as yours. Mine's, I can't actually put the trailer in the water. So I'm very similar to what you're doing. I'm going to pull it in my parking space. I'm going to do all the loading the gear into the kayak. I'll pull the kayak off the trailer and just have it kind of sitting to where I don't want to block the parking spaces next to me. I want people, other people to be able to maneuver around the parking lot. But I'll have my kayak on the boondocks, and then I'm throwing everything in. And once I've got everything in, I'm fully prepped. Then I'm walking it down to the water, and I'm trying to make it as quick as possible. Hit the water, basically have the wheels rolling, hop onto the nose, walk back, and then push off the ramp. I'm going to immediately pull my boondocks, the landing gear out, and set those in the front, and then get the kayak off to the side. And every ramp's a little different, but I'm typically going to try to stick it off to the side somewhere where I'm not going to be blocking anybody using that ramp. And then I'll, if I can find a place just to pull up on the bank, or whether it's tying off on the end of a dock, and then walking I like to take my boondocks back to the car. But the big thing for me is just not being on that ramp any more than I have to. And I don't know if you've seen it, but I'm sure you have. I feel like we've all seen the kayak guy, back the truck down the ramp, and then proceed to take every individual item and load all that stuff while they're sitting there on the ramp. And when it's busy, it's not making anybody happy. Those boat anglers, they're not going to have a very good impression of kayak fishermen in general, due to that one bad experience.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. And one thing that you kind of hit on a little bit, which kind of reminded me, is like, also when you get your kayak into the water, I've seen it happen many of times. I've been guilty of it before, but I like to just pull my kayak right next to the ramp and let it sit there. Well, when the next person comes in, say they're trying to walk their boat down to the dock, well, now they got your 16 rods. They're trying to get their rope over to even get over down the dock, so like you got to really beware of that as well. And if there's people coming right behind you, like, try not to park your kayak right next to the ramp. If you're at a busy location, try to move it either down on the other side of the boat dock, or down on the end of the boat dock, or somewhere where nobody has to try to get their ropes over top of your rods to try to get their kayak where it needs to be too.
That's a good point. And I mean, I've even seen it, where other kayakers, you'll just have kayaks kind of stacked along the ramp, And it's not really a problem if it's kind of an off time, like some of the fall tournaments where there's not that many guys out on the water, and we're launching, before dark and it's 5 o'clock. It's fine to be there. But for me, if I'm doing that, as soon as I see that, one of the boats pull up or somebody's potentially going to use it, I'm going to get out of there and back away from the ramp a little bit. And for tournament fishing anyway, all of our rules, they're set up to where you're not breaking a rule by being off the bank. You can, what we don't want is to be blocking the ramp. So you can push off. We're not allowed to start towards our spot and be half a mile away. But if you get 20, 30, 40 yards away from the ramp to where people can use it, that's perfectly within the rules. And I think that's the smart thing to do. It's avoid messing up anybody's day before we even get out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. You just gotta. It's just be aware of your surroundings when you're at the ramp. Like if you're at a really busy ramp, try to move as quickly as possible. Don't be in anybody's way. If you see you're in somebody's way and you can't really help that, just like kind of give them the head nod or at least apologize or let them know that you're going to be out of there in a second and you're sorry. Again, we kind of prepped a little bit on this, but I think the big word of the day is going to be communication today. With everything that we're going to talk about. So like I said, if you are seeing you're blocking somebody's way, just communicate with them, let them know. That way they're not sitting, or they still may, but hopefully they're not sitting in their truck cussing you out for taking 2 minutes too long or 10 minutes too long or whatever it is. But just a little bit of communication goes a long way in those situations.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. That the communication is key for a lot of the other scenarios. Maybe we'll talk about, but I can think of a story not all that long ago. I think it was October, maybe. I was fishing a busy ramp. There was we had a kayak tournament launching out of there with, I think there were only maybe 15 of us, but then there was also it was at least one boat tournament launching out of it up on the Chesapeake. And I remember coming in at the end of the day, there was there's a line of boats, guys that are getting ready, and a lot of these guys, they pull up the boat, the buddy runs and goes and gets the trailer, but there's automatically a little bit of lag time. And I had the boondocks, so while I was kind of in line, and when I thought it was my turn, I go to pull up, and there was a guy, I didn't know who he was, but he was sort of directing traffic, from the shore, and he saw me pedaling up. And in my head, I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to pop my boondocks on and I'm literally going to hop out. I'm going to be in the water for 2 seconds and then pulling my kayak up the ramp and walking it back to the vehicle. And he's looking at me thinking, I'm just going to, I assume anyway, that he thought I was just going to pull up and just start unloading all my stuff and, take all day and clog up the ramp. So he's kind of, motion, hey, no, he's next. And, part of me on the inside was, I'm a little irritated because I know what I'm going to do, and I'm going to be quick, and it's not going to impact anything. And, I'm looking at it like I have every right to launch. I've been waiting like everybody else, but, I'm happy that I bit my tongue. I didn't say anything smart. I just, I bit my tongue for a few seconds and then thought of a way to kind of explain it like, hey, I've got the wheels. All I'm going to do is hop on and pull off. And, once I explained it, he's, oh, okay, it's fine. But it could have been an ugly situation if I'd have, gotten upset and started yelling, and it would have messed up everybody's day for no reason. So I think you're right. Communication is going to be key in any of these situations. Key to having a good day on the water is just being decent and communicating well with the people around you. Anything else we missed on kind of the boat ramp etiquette?
Not that I can think of. Just make sure you're moving, and like I said, just keep an eye on what's happening around you. I think that's kind of the biggest thing. Is be aware of your surroundings.
Right on. The next one I wanted to talk about was more what you do when you you're actually encountering other fishermen. So I guess it's more the fishing side of it. And there's a whole bunch of different scenarios that we could go over, but I thought of a couple that kind of I've run into where, I've had questions at times, but situations where you're running into a bank fisherman or you're running into another boat in the water. You guys are all out there fishing, but how do you go around somebody? How do you kind of move past somebody without kind of cutting them off or upsetting them and getting in front and fishing their water? But I guess before jumping into the boat one, I wanted to talk bank fishermen because for me, I started out as a bank fisherman. I remember what it was like to have a limited, tiny little stretch of water you could fish. So I'm always trying to give them a wide berth. But I see other guys that just kind of fish down the bank and maybe aren't that considerate. But I wanted to see kind of your take on that. Do you stay? You get how close is too close to that bank fisherman?
I mean, generally especially for bank fishermen, what I try to do is, as you're coming up on them, just see what they're doing. Um, if they're just like bluegill fishing, tossing it 10 feet off the bank, like, I'll tend to ease a little bit closer. But yeah, I mean, if they're bass fishing, they're bombing cast out there, I just try to see where they're casting to and, try to make a wide bend kind of around that. You're not going to bother them if they can't cast that far, I don't feel like. So as long as you're not in the vicinity of where they're casting to or where they can cast to, then to me, that's the way to do it. The other thing is, again, communication. Just maybe speak to them. Some people don't care if you're talking to them; they'll just sit there and talk with you. They don't care if you come right through. Um, some people may, but you're never going to know that without communicating with them and just trying to get a feel for what they're doing, and if they're going to get upset with you getting too close, then you may just want to take an extra, go out quite a ways. But like I said, most people aren't going to mind too much, especially if you've interacted with them a little bit. If you come within a little bit closer to them, the kayaks don't, in my opinion, don't muddy up the water too much. Where people are fishing. So as long as you're communicating with them, see kind of how they feel about that, and then that will have an impact on my decision on how I maneuver around them at that point.
I think that's good. I've thought about this one, and I don't know that there's a set number, but and I'm not out there with a rangefinder or anything, but I try and stay like 2 casts. I don't know if that's too close or if maybe that's too extreme, but I'm trying to get to where even if I cast as far as I could cast and they could cast as far as as whatever their
Yeah,
max distance is, that our baits aren't going to touch. And
yeah.
I
I
feel like
mean,
maybe that's overkill, but
that that's a very good point. I mean, like I wasn't thinking of that necessarily, but yeah, I mean, give them that space, and I think everybody will kind of be happy in that scenario if you give them 2 cast lengths.
and I feel like most places that works. I've been in a few situations where it's like a long canal, and I'm not 100% sure what to do there, other than I know technically I'm allowed to navigate certain areas. Even if somebody can take a big catfish rig and launch it across the whole canal. Um,
Yeah,
but you know, I think that's the one kind of weird situation I've run into. But kind of like you were saying before, I think communication will help that because I've had situations where if somebody's got a bunch of line out, you can come right up tight to the bank, and maybe they'd rather have you come right up against the bank and kind of go under versus going out. Maybe they're trying to fish that opposite side, but it or and maybe that's not the best example, But I've had similar situations with boats where they would rather have you come inside and shallow, on the shallow side of a point, if they're out on the point fishing, casting towards the deeper water, where you're less in the way that way, and you won't really know unless you talk to them.
Yeah,
But
and like I had this one scenario. Where were we at? Chickamauga, and I was coming around this point, and it was an island, but it was a long, drawn out point, and there was a guy fishing quite a ways off of it. And like I said, I was kind of watching what he was doing, and he's fishing. He's not like casting up shallow on the point, but I assume he was fishing like a brush pile or something out quite a bit deeper. But like I wanted to get around him, but to go around him, I would have had to, go a lot further unless I could have just hugged the bank. So kind of what I did is I was watching what he was doing, but then I asked him, I said, "Hey man, do you mind if I cut right through here?" And he was like, "No, go for it." So I mean, in that situation, that communication really saved me some time. So because if else, I was up next to the bank already, so I'd have had to gone all the way out around him, giving him the space out that way, and then come back. When really, I just was able to make a quick shortcut right through the shallows, kind of on the point he was fishing, but didn't disturb him at all. And we were all happy with the scenario. Whereas if like he could have been fishing up shallow, and if I would have just cut straight through, not said anything, he'd have been pissed off, yelling at me. I'd have got mad. So again, the communication, I think, just helps everybody out, and let's me know what you're planning to do, and let's what I'm planning to do, and hopefully y'all can everybody can make that work together and not irritate the other person.
yeah, it's a good point. I know you've got that Old Town, that nice motor in it, but man, I've run into that scenario before where it's that long point and you're looking at how far you'd have to pedal or paddle. It feels like you're paddling halfway into the lake just to do a big loop and come around the guy and come
Yeah.
back the other side. Man, talk about, a bunch of wasted time for no reason. If like in your scenario where if the guy's not fishing up there, and you communicate it, man, I'd do that 100 times out of 100 versus do an extra
Yeah,
half mile of exercise for no reason.
the thing is, like, if you were just to look at that scenario without watching what the guy's doing, without communicating with him, you would think that nobody should do that. But again, he wasn't fishing anything up there, so having that communication really helped out and was able to save me time. It made me realize that he wasn't going to get upset. So like I've seen a lot of people that won't communicate and just go around them, and then they end up wasting a bunch of time when they could have just done that and nobody would have been upset about it. um so yeah, I mean, I'm going to say that word communication a lot tonight, but that's really key in every single scenario we're going to talk about, I'm pretty sure. So
Yeah, I completely agree with that last point, and communication's key. But I wanted to shift it in kind of to a different scenario where you're encountering a boat. And I guess I've got two general examples. One where you're fishing down a bank and a boat or a kayak, another angler is coming towards you and you're going to meet. And then the second one would be, you're overtaking another fisherman, or you guys are both going in the same direction. But I want to start with at least what I think is the easier one, where you guys are gonna meet. Like for me, it's pretty similar to I approach it real similar to how I would approach the bank fisherman, just kind of giving them a wide berth. But is there anything kind of extra that you would do in that situation where you're just passing somebody essentially? You're going to fish the used water that they have, and they're going to fish, where you've just been fishing, and you're just essentially just passing them.
yeah, I mean, so to be real, in that kind of scenario, is what I'm going to do depends on what's happening with me that day. Like if I'm really catching fish and I'm really on them, I'm going to try to ease up, get as close as we can to that person without getting too close, and see or communicate with them and see who's going to give way to go around. If I'm not on fish, if I feel like I'm not really on anything solid, I'll just, a lot of times I'll be that first one just to go ahead and dip around and kind of get out of their way. But yeah, like if I feel, like I said, if I feel like I'm catching fish, I'm gonna kind of try to keep doing what I'm doing as long as possible. But because in that scenario, somebody's got to give way at some point. I mean, y'all can cross real close
Exactly.
if you want, but that generally doesn't happen. Usually, somebody's going to give way at least a little bit, to get around. And yeah, communicating with that person and seeing, you know tell them, hey, I'm gonna go around, you can have it, or I've had that scenario plenty of times where, like, I'm basically done fishing, especially if I see them having just fished that. If I'm don't feel like I'm on anything, I'm probably just going to head to a different spot to begin anyways after that. Nobody's at fault there, y'all just happen to be fishing the same bank and came across each other. So yeah, I mean, really, for that scenario, like I said, it's just going to depend on how I'm feeling about the day, how I'm catching them, and how solid I think the rest of that bank's going to be. But yeah, the communication. See, hey, you want me to go around? You going to go around? Just kind of get a feel for what's happening, what the scenario is, and then you can make your decision based on that.
Yeah. And do you ever slow down? Like that's one thing I'll, even if I'm moving down a bank, if I really want to hit that stretch, maybe I feel like I'm doing something that's unique that, you know, I don't mind fishing behind somebody else. There's situations where
Mhm.
I'll just slow down and stop and let them keep going. And I I feel like in a lot of situations, if I'm not moving, then they're just eventually going to catch up. And I don't mind waiting for them to, basically they're not having to change their speed or do anything. I mean, I guess technically in my scenario, they could stop too, and then we just have a standoff, play chicken until we have to communicate. But is that something that you've ever done? Is just kind of slow down and all right, I'm gonna hold my spot here, and then once they pass, I'll almost like protecting an area or trying to guard it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a big thing to watch other people, not to, like, get information from them or see how they're catching fish or anything, but just to see what they're doing. And if they're moving through an area, if they're throwing a crankbait and you've been slamming them on a shaky head, like, yeah, I mean, let them go through there, let them buzz through there, and then that way they're out of your way. You can come in behind them and hopefully catch all those fish that they missed. So like paying attention to that sort of thing, I think is a great tip. Not necessarily what this exact show's about, but yeah, I mean, being able to watch what the other anglers around you are doing and how they're moving through areas definitely determines how I'm going to fish an area or if I'm going to fish an area.
Cool. So now the trickier one, at least to me, where you and another fisherman are fishing down the bank, and maybe you're just moving a little faster. Maybe they're fishing something finessey, fishing slow, and even if it's a bass boat, you're slowly overtaking them, and you're gonna pass them, and eventually uh, have to make a decision on do I pass them and kind of move in and fish that area ahead of them. And I feel like it can be a gray area because on the one hand they're going slower, you're going faster, but on the other hand, if you come cutting right in on somebody, dip right in front of them, even if you're fishing faster, it's a good way to upset some people. So I guess maybe a shorter way to ask the question is what constitutes cutting somebody off? How close is too close? Kind of how would you approach a scenario like that?
I mean, so if I'm going to kind of overtake somebody and continue to work down the bank or whatever it is that they're fishing, what I'm going to try to do is give them a really wide, pass them at a really wide angle. And then you got to get, like, I don't know what the yardage is, or, the how long, but like, you got to give them a lot of space, or else you are going to make some people mad doing that. So just try to give them plenty of room, get around them, make sure they have plenty of what they were fishing left. If you see you're coming to the end of a little stretch, like, maybe it's not even worth doing it at all if you're just gonna upset them. If you just hop directly in front of them, um, communication, communicate with them, like.
Yeah. And I guess this is as good a place as any. I had a situation that kind of made me stop and think, because I feel like in that situation, it's a little bit situation dependent. Maybe that's a better way to say it. It's one thing to me if I'm moving pretty quick and they're just fishing super slow. A lot of kayakers that do really well like to finesse fish and really just beat a spot up. And if they're going really slow and I'm humming down the bank, using the motor, fishing fast, the spinnerbait or something, I might come in a little closer than I would if we were both really similar, kind of fishing the same speed. If we're fishing the same speed, I feel like I have to give them more space. But if I'm going pretty quick, I get ahead of them or away from them quicker, and I don't feel like I'm messing with them. If they're maybe fishing real slow and it's going to be 20 minutes before they even catch up to the area where I'm going to cut in and start. But I did something that I think was, in hindsight, was wrong up on Cayuga earlier this year. And it was a similar situation to kind of the hypothetical there where, another fisherman's going down the bank. And I had a couple of specific targets identified. I think it was post-spawn fish, and I'd seen them up shallow, caught a few fish on a dock. And I first encountered the other angler. I don't remember his name, but we chatted a little bit about the day, and neither of us was having a really great day. But I continued fishing a couple docks where we initially talked, and then he moved on, and I didn't run into him until probably half a mile, maybe even more than that, down the bank, where I finished the little stretch of docks, and I was like, all right, I'm going to make a run to that one specific overhanging tree. And I think my mistake was I didn't communicate. So I went directly from that stretch of docks to that tree. I didn't stop. I pedaled as hard as I could the whole way. It's in a tournament, so I'm trying to save time. And I got, by the time I got to where he was, he'd just been slowly fishing down that whole bank. But I came in, and it was maybe 50 to 100 yards that I came in and just went straight for that tree. And I thought I heard him mumble something under his breath. I mean, we're still fairly far away, but when I thought about it afterwards, I was like, that all I had to do was say something. Well, like we've been, you've been harping on that communication. All I had to do was say, hey man, I know you're fishing down this bank. There's that one thing. I want to make one cast or two casts at this one specific target. Is that going to mess you up? And, maybe he just said yes. And I'm like, all right, just, go on. Or maybe he just said no, and I still got to fish my little spot. But I feel like not communicating that situation, I was in the wrong. So, dude, if you're watching, my bad. That was a screw up. But what do you think? Was that, and I know, I'm giving kind of vague, general, I'm not giving you real specific information, but does that sound right?
Yeah.
What do you think? Was I right? Was I wrong?
I mean, I don't think necessarily in a lot of these scenarios that we're bringing up that there probably is a wrong, but there's not necessarily, like, as long as you're being a little bit mindful, I don't think it's necessarily wrong. I mean, we're fishermen, we're competing for a lot of money sometimes, and we get upset at certain things, and it may not have been absolutely blatant wrong or anything, but like at the same time, could you have done better? Probably, but it's all scenario dependent, and it just kind of it's going to depend on how people react. Some people may not even care, but you may get somebody that's just going to be mad at it, hate you forever, because you did one little thing. You cut, you gave them 100 yards instead of 200 yards. Like it's like I said, I don't know if there's always going to be a right and wrong answer necessarily, but again, it's just being mindful of what's around you, who's around you, what they're doing. You mentioned earlier, like going down a bank, if you're fishing fast and somebody else is sitting there fishing real slow. Again, that's watching what people are doing. I don't think anybody's going to be mad if you blow down the bank, throwing a spinner bait, and they're just sitting there fishing a brush pile that's 10 feet off the bank, with a worm. They may be hitting all the brush piles there, and you're just you're not really you're not necessarily fishing for the same fish. So
Exactly.
so you had mentioned, like, you may not give them quite as much room at that point, and I think that's reasonable. The other person may not think so, they may think so, they may not care, but it's so I don't think there's always a right and wrong, but as long as people are being mindful of what's happening around them, what the other people are doing, what you think the other people are getting ready to do, and what you're getting ready to do, I think that goes a long way, just to see stuff like that, and maybe you did notice it as you were going over there, and you're like, maybe that's not too cool, so you back off. Um, you know, I think that goes a long way.
I like that answer. Not necessarily wrong, but could have been better. If all I had to do was communicate, and I'll say it, I think I was wrong. I wish I could do that again because you know I wasn't having a great day. I mean, we both caught fish, but we weren't anywhere near the lead or check range. But still, putting messing up somebody else's day, putting them in a bad headspace, just you know just by not communicating, it was unnecessary. I could have done better in that situation. But I
Yeah.
have have sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, a whole nother wrench that gets thrown in things is, it's day two of a tournament, or even the end of day one on a tournament, and that person is leading the tournament. You don't always know that person. You may not know it was the person leading, or you may. So that definitely needs to have an effect on people's decisions when they're doing certain things, and making sure, for sure, you're communicating with them, and making sure you're giving them proper space. If they're leading, they've led day one of the tournament, they're leading day two towards the end, like, you got to give them their space, especially
Yeah.
if you're not in contention at all. Um, so there's all sorts of different scenarios that can play out, but yeah, try to be aware of if there is the person that's leading the tournament, or in the top 3 or 5 or 10 or whatever it is. That's going to determine how much space you should give them, that day.
Yeah, and that's an awesome point because you know I've been fortunate to be in a position like that a few times, and I've also been on the other side where I happen to be fishing the same area as somebody who's doing really well, and I'm not, and you know I think it comes back to kind of that golden rule, sort of do to others as you'd have them do to you. That I've had a few
Yeah.
situations where I was happy with how I handled it because I knew I had no chance. Maybe I could have had an awesome day and cashed a check, but I'm fishing with somebody who's got a chance to win the thing, or they're in the top 10, or they've got a really good chance to cut a check, and it's a small area, especially. It's like, I don't want to be in that person's way. I don't want to be the reason that somebody doesn't do well. And in that situation, I've had a couple times where I'll yield and, hey man, I'm not going to mess up your area. And I don't think there's necessarily an obligation to do that. But I think it's the right thing to do in some situations. I mean, technically it's public water. We can all be out there, but man, I know that this the times where I've felt like I was doing well. If somebody else kind of came in and encroached on sort of what I was doing, I would not take that very well. And I think that's true
Yeah.
for a lot of guys. You don't get that many chances to win an event. And I don't want to be the reason somebody else doesn't. Especially maybe it's different if Casey, if you and I are sharing a spot or sharing a general area and we're both doing well. But if you're doing well and I'm not, there's no reason for me to be in there in your way. There's pretty much every lake we fish is big, and there's plenty of other places that that I can go where I'm not going to impact you, or vice versa. But I think that's an awesome point to just sort of not only communicate but also like treat other people the way you want to be treated. If that's your day and you're doing well, you wouldn't want somebody else coming in and fishing on that spot that wasn't there the day before. Yeah, so don't do it to somebody else.
Yeah. So, and you got to think too, like, kind of coming from the opposite view of that, like, not everybody knows everybody else, and like, you may not know the guy leading the tournament, but he may be fishing out of the same ramp as you. You just never met him, never talked to him, so you may not know that's him. But again, hopefully there's some communication going on. If he feels you're getting too close, he says something, and if you want to make a move that's anywhere near him, have that communication. And he may be like, man, I'm leading the tournament, could you please just like give me a little bit more space, and the communication just pretty much solves everything. And
Yeah.
everybody may not be happy with it, but at least where everybody stands at that point, and you can make your decision based on that. Because like you said, it is public water, you can fish wherever you want, but also these are, for the most part, they're unwritten rules that most everybody abides by. So getting to know those and trying to be familiar with what's going to make people upset and what's not, is definitely good. So
Yeah, it's definitely a code. And yeah, I think you said it pretty well. And I thought of an example, that same Chesapeake tournament where I almost got into it with the random guy telling me I couldn't use the ramp. Um, I was leading the tournament on the second day, and I'd been going up and down this one little stretch. It was a tidal fishery, and for anybody that's fished, tidal areas before it, they can change quick. The fish move around a lot, or sometimes they'll be in an area, but they won't bite until the tide is just right. Well, I made a couple passes down this bank, and another angler kind of came around a corner, and we chatted for a minute. And in my head, I'm thinking, please don't come in here, please don't come in here and fish this stretch. But just in the course of us, communicating, I was like, hey man, I'm doing well. I've got I've caught a few. I've got a chance to win this thing. And he just sort of volunteered on his own. I was like, yeah man, I'm gonna make another stretch down that bank if you don't mind. He's like, oh yeah man, I'll stay out of your area. And he just kind of yielded and fished another area. Well, I went literally my very next turn and passed down that bank. I caught 3 fish and filled out my limit, or maybe it was 2. I don't, but I filled out my limit, like literally making the exact same pass I've been making for 2 hours. And I didn't forget that. I went up and thanked that dude at the award ceremony, because if he comes down that bank and he happens to put his bait in front of that fish at the right time and catch those fish, maybe I don't end up doing well. So it's kind of a two-sided coin. But that, I'm super grateful for that dude for yielding to me, and I can when other people are in a situation, I want to be able to do the same thing that he did for me. But let's shift. I've got another scenario that I think could be interesting. I fished the Potomac a lot. I lived up that way for many years, and it's known as a community hole type fishery. There's certain places where grass comes in every year, and all the locals, everybody knows there's just certain places that they tend to get crowded. Everybody knows about them, and it just, you see a lot of boats real close together fishing those key areas. But what are your thoughts on those community holes? Is it different rules to the same rules kind of that we've been talking about apply in those? What do you think?
I mean, to me, it's definitely a little bit different rules when it applies to community holes. It kind of depends. Like, there's some community holes that not necessarily everybody knows about, but locally, it's a community hole. There's some community holes that just kind of pop up during a tournament. Like, I had a scenario that kind of played out at on the Mississippi River, and there was a little bridge, and you know, I saw people catching fish there during practice. I saw like 5 people sitting there during practice catching fish. Um, During the tournament, I had went by it the first time. There was like 3 people sitting there. It was a place where there was some big fish that rolled through there, but you could, for the most part, go there and fill out a limit pretty quickly. So I had started at another spot, and unfortunately, it wasn't hitting like it had been during practice. So I decided to go to the railroad bridge to try to catch a couple fish. I show up, there's like 5 or 6 people out there. They're fishing the rock on the bank. They're fishing the pylons there. It's a clear community hole in my opinion. Um, and I don't know. I guess I could have been a little bit in the wrong in this, but so I pulled up and just, there was nobody fishing that one pylon, so I kind of pulled up to it and started fishing it. Well, I didn't really know there was any kind of issue until a few days later, where a picture popped up of me, and well, they didn't leave my face in the kayak, but they took a picture of my boat. And what they, in my opinion, what had happened was they were fishing like facing this way, and I come up over here kind of fishing. They were like fishing more of the bank, right around the rocks around the bridge, and I come up over here fishing the pylons. Well, while I was over there fishing, they turned their kayak around and then snapped a picture of me, so it looked like I was directly in front of them. And they go on and say that oh, this person cut me off. And I don't think that's necessarily how it played out. I may not have been 100% in the right in that scenario, but again, some communication, be like, hey man, I'm gonna jump through, fish this real quick. He could have been like, no, I'm getting ready to fish that. He was pretty close to it. But again, there was also 4 or 5 other people sitting right there in that same general area, all fishing kind of the same thing. But yeah, I mean, as far as like the community holes, I think it is what it is. It's a community hole. People are gonna show up and fish it. Even people that aren't in the tournament, you're gonna have people there showing up throughout the day fishing it. So I do think the rules do apply a little bit different when that, and just as long as everybody's kind of on the same page that it is a community hole. Because I've also had scenarios that pop up where I thought I found some juice, and it's a community hole that I just didn't know about, that it was actually a community hole. So
Yeah, that's a good point, because if you're out of town traveling, you don't know. If it's not a place you've been before, or how would you know? I mean, if you're not, maybe you run into to stuff on some of these lakes. Maybe you've, some of these places where the Bassmaster's Bend, you've seen some TV footage. Everybody knows about Banana Cove on the Harris chain. Like there's some stuff that's publicized, but not everything's like that. It's but yeah, just kind of, I think, being mindful, because I think I remember you telling me that story before, and it's, if it could be really easy, if you think you found something special, and then all of a sudden there's other people on there that, you start thinking they're jumping in on your hole, or they saw you there and that's why they came over there, and it's and then you start feeling like they're in the wrong, and that lack of communication could be a problem in situations like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Communicating can just solve a lot of things. And it just, like I said before, it lets you know what the other person's thought process is. It lets them know what your thought process is. And y'all may not agree. And then, it may become an issue after that if they intend to do something that you're not happy with, whether or not, you may know about it. They may have told you about it, but you may not be happy with it still. But I just feel like the communication will solve 95 to 99% of those issues. Most of the time, having somebody tell you is a lot better than just having them do it. If they just did it on their own, you may get mad at it. But if they just asked, then it is what it is. Like, for example, here, I have a lake I fish a lot back home and catch a lot of big fish on it. And I was, it's a 700-acre lake, and there was only probably 5 trailers in the parking lot that day. So it's not a huge lake, but also only 5 boats on that lake that day. And I just caught like a 22-incher, I think. And the wind had kind of blown me off the spot a little bit. And while I'm measuring the fish, trying to get a picture of it and all that, and this boat kind of comes around the bend and idles right up to where I was fishing. And granted, now I'm probably 40, 30, 40 yards off of the spot, but he comes up right up, and I know he saw me with the fish holding it, and I assumed, and that I'm pretty sure he saw exactly where I was. So, and then he comes up right there and literally cast to right where I was catching that fish. And he might not have known that's exactly where I was casting, but that same area. And like that, to me, I don't mind. That lake is small enough where I don't mind if people are fishing around me. It's the fact that he just came up and didn't say a word, didn't say anything, and just came right in to exactly where I was fishing. And then I got triggered at that point, and then we had a bunch of words. Like I got really mad, he got really mad, and in that scenario, I think I probably could have handled it better, but I think he could have handled it better by just saying, "Hey, this is an awesome spot. Like I caught a fish here this morning or something. You mind if I make a cast here?" And I'd have been more than happy with that. But because he didn't say that, I now looked at that spot as mine, and he was intruding on my spot. But I think that just a few words would have changed how that whole situation played out. So I think the biggest takeaway from anybody listening to this is just try to be aware of your surroundings, what other people are doing, and communicate with them as best as possible.
Yeah, that's well said. And I think if I was in that same situation, I think I'd have had a similar reaction. I'm not advocating, getting into shouting matches with people or anything like that. But at a certain point, like, especially if I'm holding a big fish, like I just caught a fish there, and it's clear that the wind is pushing me away, and then somebody else goes right to it. Don't be that guy. Nobody likes that guy. But you're 100% right. I mean, a little bit of communication, and maybe you wouldn't have been happy, but it would have diffused the situation. Because man, a 22-inch fish, I don't catch very many fish 22 inches, but I catch a giant fish, and especially I know you're great at the offshore fishing, and those types of places will hold multiples, and to have somebody else The only thing that would make it worse for me is if while I'm still measuring that fish, I get my photos and I release it, and then I turn, and then he catches another giant off of it. Oh, I'd have been even. I don't know what how I would have handled it. It would not have been pretty.
Yeah.
But
so in that scenario, like, it was funny because, like, we were both heated. There was a lot of words exchanged, and the next day, or it was like a couple days later, I see him pull up to the ramp as I'm getting ready to either load or unload, and I'm like, "Oh Lord, we're on ground now. Like, something's gonna happen." Like, and he pulled up, rolled down his window, and apologized, for the way he acted. And, like, it's sometimes you got to take a step back from these scenarios and see, we're all just fishing. It's, yeah, we may be fishing for some money, but, like, at the same time, we're just fishing. So, like, don't get too heated in those scenarios. Take a step back. You may see that you were in the wrong in that scenario, but in the heat of the moment, you may not feel that way. And you may be right, but at the same time, just sometimes just stepping back from that is the way to go. I mean, these lakes we're all fishing, there's fish everywhere. You can find another spot. And it's not always worth throwing hands or making somebody pissed off at you for the rest of their life, over a tournament.
yeah, a fishing spot at the end of the day.
Yeah.
No, I agree completely. That communication. Well, I don't have anything else. I know there's plenty of scenarios that we can come up with, and I'm not going to say we've covered everything, but I feel like we've covered some pretty common situations that we run into on the water, and hopefully we've helped some guys that maybe don't know all these unwritten rules. Maybe we've shared some information that will help keep other people from having unwanted altercations on the water. But yeah, like Casey's been saying, communication. Anything I missed, Casey?
I don't think so, man. I mean, I took a few notes, and I think we had everything covered that I had written down. I think that's good. And, like I said, any other scenario that somebody may find themselves in, communication solves. It's going to solve. It's most likely going to solve any issues that you come up with another person, or any kind of scenario on the water with anybody.
Well, Casey, I have kept you long enough. I feel like we could talk for too long. So I do want to say again, thank you for joining. It's been fun, and I want to give you a minute to kind of take the floor, and you want to talk sponsors or thank anybody. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, I'll thank a few sponsors here. I mean, Old Town, first and foremost, they've been with me for years. The Autopilot is the perfect kayak for me. I love it. It's got the Minn Kota motor built in. It's the best kayak out there, in my opinion. Humminbird, Dakota Lithium, and Fish USA. I got a bunch of sponsors, but we'll just hit on those for right now. Those are what keep me going on the water, what allow me to catch fish offshore, and what Minn Kota keeps me spot locked out there, in no matter the conditions. But I appreciate you having me on and let me thank some sponsors. And dude, it was an awesome show, and I think Bailey's left it in the right hands to kind of take it over and run it by yourself, man. I'm pumped for you and excited to see where this thing goes.
I appreciate that, dude. We'll definitely have you back on.
Sounds good. All right, man. Take care.
That was Casey Reed, talking fishing etiquette. So I always love talking to Casey. He's a guy that I looked up to since I started tournament fishing. When I first started, he was one of the guys that was always standing there getting a check or a trophy. So I've enjoyed, getting to know him better and getting to pick his brain a little bit. So I'm sure we'll be talking to him again before too long. But we have reached the part of the show, which we do every week, an opportunity to highlight some anglers for their on the water exploits. And it's still kind of a slow time of year. We not too many places where there's tournaments going on, but we do have a few. But it's time for the kayak kings and queens of the week. So without further ado, first king of the week, Thomas Woodring. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, Thomas. But Thomas won the Florida Bass Nation Central Region Tournament that was held on January 7th on Lake Parker. He put up a total of 88 inches. It's a respectable number everywhere, enough to take home the win. So congrats, Thomas, our first kayak king of the week. Second, also out of a Florida-based tournament, this time the Florida Bass Nation South region, they had a tournament January 6th, and Mr. Chris Mitchell won that tournament with a total of 83.5 inches. Again, taking home the win. I'm jealous of Chris and Thomas, the fact that they're in Florida right now. I cannot wait to get down there in a few weeks. But I'm very jealous. But congratulations to both of those gentlemen for winning those tournaments, early season tournaments down in Florida. And then I wanted to sneak in a third king of the week, another tournament angler that you might recognize. And he just posted something that I thought was really funny on social media. So Garrett Morgan is my third king of the week. I found this video on Garrett Morgan Outdoors, his Instagram account, and it was just a video of him in his Old Town canoe. Looked like he had his kids, his family, and he's using that Old Town canoe as a sled, taking advantage of some snowy weather. I thought that was funny, and I wanted to give a shout out to Garrett for finding another use for his Old Town kayak. So congratulations to our kayak kings of the week. And if you know somebody, you want to nominate somebody, please do. I try to scour social media and look for things, but I do not promise, or I cannot pretend to see everything. So if anybody out there knows of somebody who's done something cool in the kayak fishing world, whether it's tournament fishing or just they're putting out good social media content, have a cool video, anything that you like, feel free to drop us a line over at Kayak Fishing Weekly. You can hit up me on my socials or Bailey, but let us know if you've got somebody that you want to nominate for Kayak King or Queen of the Week. And I guess that'll wrap it up. Big show for me. First time sort of having the reins myself. I want to say thank you to Bailey for giving me an opportunity to join the Serious Angler team. We'll be working together. I promise you will see Bailey, not just on his other shows, but he's going to be a frequent visitor on Kayak Fishing Weekly. So I'm very grateful to him for the opportunity, and hopefully we'll keep things moving in a positive direction on into 24. I'm looking forward to the warm weather that I'll hopefully find in Florida in a few days. For everybody who is dealing with crazy weather, with cold temps, be safe, stay warm, and we'll see you next week.